James Thompson approached the graduation stage, finally ready to escape 4 years of relentless torment. This was supposed to be his moment of triumph, his clean break from the nightmare. But Ethan Carter and Liam Hayes had other plans. They saw a quiet kid from a working-class family, perfect for one final humiliation. Laughter exploded. Phones recorded everything. The audience watched in cruel silence. But what they didn't know was that humiliation had a way of forging people into something harder. They thought they would get away with it forever. They couldn't have been more wrong. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. The fluorescent lights of Jefferson High School's main hallway buzzed overhead as James Thompson adjusted his graduation cap for the 3rd time that morning. 3 weeks until freedom. 3 weeks until he could leave behind the whispered comments, the shoulder checks in the hallway, and the constant weight of being watched. "You nervous about the ceremony?" his friend Noah asked, closing his locker with a metallic clang. "More excited than nervous," James replied, though his stomach churned as Ethan Carter and Liam Hayes walked past, their conversation loud enough for him to hear. "Can't believe we have to sit through another boring graduation speech," Liam said, not bothering to lower his voice. "Don't worry," Ethan responded with a smirk. "Graduation will be memorable for everyone." James's jaw tightened, but he forced himself to keep walking. Just 3 more weeks. He'd survived 4 years of their casual cruelty, the accidental trips, the class-based jabs disguised as humor, the way they made him feel invisible and hyper-visible at the same time. Central State University represented everything different. A fresh start, new people, a chance to be seen for his mind rather than targeted for his background. That evening, James sat at the kitchen table with his grandmother, Evelyn, addressing graduation announcements with careful handwriting. "Your mom would be so proud," Evelyn said, her weathered hands smoothing the envelope. "First in our family to go to college on a scholarship." "Partial scholarship, Grandma," James corrected gently. "But it's something. It's everything, honey. Between that scholarship and my savings, we'll make it work." Evelyn's voice carried determination mixed with worry. She'd been working double shifts at the community center, squirreling away every penny for his college expenses. "I know you're sacrificing for me," James said. "I won't let you down. You've already made me proud." Through everything, Evelyn's voice carried the weight of every parent-teacher conference where she'd advocated for her grandson. Every night she'd found him doing homework with a split lip or bruised ribs that he claimed came from falling. "It's almost over," James said. "After graduation, I never have to see them again." Evelyn nodded, but something in her expression suggested she knew it wasn't that simple. "Just remember what I taught you about taking the high. Charode, your strength comes from your character, not your fists." The weeks passed in a blur of final exams and graduation preparations. James threw himself into his studies, maintaining the grades that had earned him his partial scholarship to Central State University. He helped Evelyn with her small backyard garden, read books on his future major, and counted down the days until he could walk across that stage with dignity. The night before graduation, he tried on his cap and gown in front of Evelyn's old mirror. "Look at you," she whispered from the doorway. "So handsome, so smart. Tomorrow, you show everyone what the Thompson family is made of." James straightened his shoulders. Tomorrow he would walk across that stage, shake the principal's hand and accept his diploma as validation of 4 years of perseverance. Ethan and Liam would become memories, high school bullies who would fade into irrelevance as he built his real life. Graduation morning dawned bright and humid, the gymnasium filled with proud families, younger siblings fidgeting in their chairs, and the buzz of anticipation that marked the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. James found his place in the alphabetically arranged line of graduates, his stomach fluttering with nervous energy. Around him, his classmates chatted excitedly about summer plans and college preparations. Some would attend community college, others would work. A few had military commitments, but today they were all equals, all survivors of the same 4-year journey. Thompson, James would be called near the end, giving him time to watch. His classmates received their diplomas, and imagine his own moment on stage. Evelyn sat in the third row, wearing her best dress and holding her old camera. She'd taken the morning off from her job at the community center, something she rarely did, to be here for this moment. Her pride radiated across the gymnasium as she spotted her grandson in line. The ceremony began with the principal's welcome speech, followed by the valedictorian address from Emily Parker, a quiet girl James had shared several classes with. Over the years, as she spoke about perseverance and community, James felt a surge of optimism about his future. The diploma presentations began. Each name called represented a small victory, a young adult ready to take on the world. James watched his classmates walk across the stage, some stumbling nervously, others striding confidently, all of them transformed by the simple act of receiving that rolled piece of paper. As the alphabet progressed toward T, James's heart began to race. This was it. This was his moment to claim what he'd earned through 4 years of academic excellence, despite constant obstacles. Carter, Ethan. Hayes, Liam, Principal Andrews called, his voice echoing through the gymnasium speakers. The two boys walked confidently across the stage, their families applauding from the audience. Ethan's father stood up, recording with his phone, while Liam's mother beamed with obvious pride. As they descended the stage steps, Ethan caught Liam's eye and nodded toward where James sat in the graduate line. They'd been planning this moment for weeks, waiting for the perfect opportunity to remind Thompson exactly where he belonged. The ceremony continued with mechanical precision. Stevens Maria, applause. Taylor Michael, more applause. Each name brought James closer to his moment, his hands growing sweaty inside his graduation gloves. Evelyn adjusted her camera, checking the battery one more time. She'd waited 18 years for this moment, watching her grandson walk across that stage with dignity, claiming the education his parents had never lived to see him achieve. Thompson, James. James stood, his legs slightly unsteady but his spine straight. The walk to the stage felt endless, every step carrying him toward vindication. He climbed the stairs, approached Principal Andrews, and extended his hand for the diploma that represented everything he'd worked for. Principal Andrews smiled and handed him the rolled certificate tied with Jefferson High's red and white ribbon. "Congratulations, Mr. Thompson. Best of luck at Central State University." "Thank you, sir." James's voice carried quiet pride as he accepted the diploma, turning toward the audience where Evelyn sat with tears streaming down her cheeks. That's when Ethan and Liam struck. They'd positioned themselves at the base of the stage stairs, ostensibly waiting to congratulate classmates. As James descended, diploma clutched in his right hand, Ethan stepped forward with a wide grin. "Hey, Thompson, let me see that diploma. I want to check if it's real." Before James could react, Ethan snatched the certificate from his hand and tossed it to Liam, who caught it with theatrical flair. "Looks fake to me," Liam announced loudly, his voice carrying across the gymnasium. "I think someone made a mistake." The audience began to murmur, confusion rippling through the crowd. Some parents laughed, thinking it was a harmless graduation prank between friends. Others sensed something darker. "Give it back," James said quietly, his voice barely audible over the growing noise. "What's that?" Ethan cupped his ear mockingly. "Speak up, Thompson. Use your words like a big boy." Liam held the diploma high above his head, just out of James's reach. "Maybe we should return this to the office. Tell them there's been some kind of mix-up." James lunged for the certificate, desperation overriding caution. Liam stepped back with a laugh and began tearing the diploma in half, the ripping sound sharp and final in the suddenly quiet gymnasium. "Oops," Liam said with mock concern. "Butterfingers." Ethan shoved James hard in the chest, sending him stumbling backward. "Careful there, Thompson. Don't want you to hurt yourself over some piece of paper." James hit the ground hard, his cap flying off as laughter erupted from sections of the audience. Some people recorded with their phones, already composing social media posts about the funny graduation prank. The torn pieces of his diploma fluttered around him like confetti. From her seat, Evelyn shot to her feet, her camera forgotten as she moved toward the stage. Her face had transformed from joy to pure fury, but security guards were already intervening. directing families to remain seated. Principal Andrews stepped to the microphone, his voice strained. "Let's maintain order, please. We'll continue." With the ceremony, Ethan and Liam high-fived each other, their mission accomplished. They'd reduced James to exactly what they'd always seen him as, someone beneath them, someone whose achievements could be literally torn apart for their amusement. James remained on the floor for several seconds, staring at the torn pieces of his diploma. Around him, the ceremony resumed, as if nothing had happened. Other graduates received their certificates while he sat surrounded by the shredded remains of 4 years of academic achievement. A teacher finally helped him to his feet, brushing off his gown with professional efficiency. "Are you hurt?" she asked quietly. James shook his head, unable to find words. The physical pain from the fall paled compared to the devastation of watching his moment of triumph become public humiliation. As he walked unsteadily back to his seat, he heard Ethan's voice behind him. "Just a prank, man. Don't be so sensitive." The laughter continued sporadically throughout the rest of the ceremony. Evelyn remained standing, her hands clenched into fists, watching her grandson disappear into himself the way he had so many times before. When the ceremony finally ended with the traditional cap toss, James didn't participate. He sat motionless as celebration exploded around him, torn diploma pieces still scattered at his feet, like the remnants of a dream that had died in front of everyone he'd ever known. The ride home from graduation passed in suffocating silence. Evelyn gripped the steering wheel so tightly, her knuckles had gone white, while James stared out the passenger window, watching familiar suburban streets blur past. The torn pieces of his diploma sat in a plastic bag on his lap. Evelyn had insisted they collect every fragment. "Those boys," Evelyn finally spoke, her voice shaking with controlled rage. "What they did was evil. Pure evil." James said nothing. What was there to say? That he'd endured 4 years of their cruelty, only to have his moment of triumph destroyed in front of everyone? That the laughter would replay in his head forever? "We should report this to the school board, to the police. This was assault." "It won't matter," James whispered. "It never matters." Evelyn pulled into their driveway and turned off the engine. In the sudden quiet, she reached over and took her grandson's hand. "Honey, I need you to hear me. What happened today doesn't change who you are or what you've accomplished. You earned that diploma through 4 years of hard work. Nobody can take that away from you." James nodded, but his eyes remained empty. "I'm going to my room." For the next week, James barely left his bedroom. He ignored calls from classmates, deleted social media apps to avoid seeing videos of his humiliation, and picked at the hayu, meals Evelyn brought to his door. The acceptance letter from Central State University sat unopened on his desk. The partial scholarship that had once filled him with pride, now feeling like charity. Evelyn watched her grandson disappearing into himself and made a decision. "Get dressed," she announced on a sweltering Tuesday morning, standing in his doorway with car keys in hand. "We're going out." "I don't want to go anywhere." "That wasn't a request, James Thompson. Get dressed now." 20 minutes later, Evelyn pulled up in front of Miller's boxing gym, a converted warehouse with faded paint and windows covered in fight posters. Through the open doors, they could hear the rhythmic pounding of heavy bags and the sharp snap of speed bags. "Grandma, what are we doing here?" "Something I should have done years ago." Evelyn got out of the car and walked toward the entrance, leaving James no choice but to follow. Inside, the gym smelled of sweat, leather, and determination. Fighters of all ages worked the equipment. Teenagers learning footwork, middle-aged, men reliving their youth, a few serious competitors preparing for actual bouts. A stocky man in his 40s approached them, wiping his hands on a towel. "Can I help you, folks?" "Are you Coach Miller?" Evelyn asked. "Danny Miller." "Yes, ma'am. This is my place." Evelyn straightened her shoulders. "My grandson needs to learn how to fight." Coach Miller studied James, taking in the defeated posture and hollow eyes. "What happened to him?" "Life happened, and he needs to be ready for when it happens again." James found his voice. "Grandma, I don't want to..." "You want to spend the rest of your life letting people like those boys define who you are?" Evelyn's voice carried steel. Your parents didn't die in that car crash so you could give up. They died believing you'd fight for the life they couldn't live to see you have. Coach Miller crossed his arms. Fighting's not just about throwing punches, son. It's about discipline, control, knowing when to fight and when to walk away. You interested in learning that? James looked around the gym, watching fighters push themselves past their limits. Something stirred in his chest. Not anger, but hunger. Hunger to never feel helpless again. Yes, sir. The summer transformed James in ways he hadn't imagined possible. Every morning at 6 he was at the gym, learning footwork and form. Coach Miller worked him harder than any teacher ever had, pushing him past the point where his lungs burned and his muscles screamed. Pain is just weakness leaving the body, Coach Miller would say, holding the heavy bag steady as James threw combinations. But anger without discipline is just stupidity with violence. Evelyn watched her grandson's metamorphosis with a mixture of pride and concern. His shoulders broadened, his movements became more confident, and the hollow look gradually left his eyes. But she also noticed the way his jaw tightened when he thought no one was looking, the intensity that flickered behind his calm exterior. By August, James could go 3 rounds with the gym's amateur fighters. His reflexes had sharpened, his body had hardened, and most importantly, his mind had focused. He no longer saw himself as a victim waiting for the next attack. "You're ready," Coach Miller told him on his last day before leaving for college. "But remember what I taught you. The strongest fighters know when not to fight." James nodded, understanding the wisdom but feeling the fire burning in his chest. He was no longer the boy who'd been humiliated at graduation. He was someone who could protect himself. Central State University's campus bustled with freshman orientation activities. James moved into his dorm room, unpacked his belongings, and felt genuine optimism for the first time since graduation. This was his chance to start over, to be known for his mind rather than targeted for his background. That optimism lasted exactly 3 days. He was walking across the main quad, heading to the library when he heard a familiar laugh. His blood froze as he turned to see Ethan Carter and Liam Hayes lounging on the steps of the student union, surrounded by other freshmen who were already drawn to their easy confidence and obvious wealth. Ethan noticed him first, his face shifting from casual amusement to shocked recognition. "Well, well," Ethan said, standing up slowly. "Look who followed us to college." Liam stood up beside Ethan, a slow grin spreading across his face. "No way. Thompson actually made it to Central State. Who'd you have to beg for that?" "Scholarship." The group of freshmen around them sensed entertainment brewing. Some pulled out phones, others simply gathered closer, forming a loose circle that felt all too familiar to James. But this time he didn't shrink back. His summer of training had changed more than just his body. "Just trying to get to the library," James said calmly, his voice steady in a way that surprised even him. "The library?" Ethan laughed, looking around at his new audience. "Guys, this is the kid I was telling you about from high school. Remember that graduation prank video that went viral?" Several students nodded, recognition dawning on their faces. James felt the familiar burn of shame, but underneath it something else simmered, a controlled fire that Coach Miller had taught him to harness. "That was hilarious," one of Ethan's new friends said. "You should show them, dude." Liam stepped closer, emboldened by the crowd's energy. "What's wrong, Thompson? Cat got your tongue again?" He reached out to shove James's shoulder, just like he had countless times in high school. But this time, James's hand shot up and caught Liam's wrist before contact, his grip iron-strong from months of heavy bag work. "Don't touch me," James said quietly, his voice carrying an edge that made Liam's eyes widen. For a moment, silence stretched between them. Liam tried to pull his wrist free, but James's grip held firm for 3 seconds before releasing him. Ethan's expression shifted from amusement to something more serious. "Whoa, Thompson's got some fight in him now. Look out, everyone." James stepped back, his grandmother's words echoing in his head about taking the high road. "I'm not looking for trouble." "Good thing," Ethan said, "because trouble has a way of finding people like you around here." The crowd began to disperse as other students lost interest. But Ethan and Liam remained, studying James with new calculation. This wasn't the same broken boy they'd tormented in high school. As James walked away toward the library, he heard Liam mutter to Ethan, "Did you see how strong his grip was? What happened to him over the summer?" "Doesn't matter," Ethan replied. "By the time we're done with him, he'll remember his place." Meanwhile, in Hamilton Hall's third-floor study lounge, Emily Parker looked up from her organic chemistry textbook as commotion drifted through the windows. She'd been the valedictorian at Jefferson High, the quiet girl who'd watched James endure years of harassment while she focused on her own academic survival. When she'd seen the graduation video circulating online over the summer, she'd felt sick. Not just because of what happened, but because she'd never spoken up, never intervened. Now, seeing those same boys on campus, she realized her silence might continue to cost someone else their dignity. Emily gathered her books and headed downstairs, following the sound of familiar voices toward the quad. Back outside, Ethan was already working on recruitment, introducing Liam to their new doormates with practiced charm, their families' donations. To the university had secured them premium housing and immediate social capital. "This place is going to be incredible," Ethan told a group of impressionable freshmen. "My dad says the key to college success is knowing who belongs and who doesn't." "Speaking of which," Liam added, "you guys should know there's this kid from our high school here, James Thompson. He's troubled, violent tendencies. You should probably avoid him." The lies came so easily, Ethan almost believed them himself. By tomorrow, half the freshman class would have heard some version of the story. James as the angry, dangerous outsider who didn't belong in their community. What they didn't know was that Emily Parker had been standing just around the corner, recording every word on her phone. That evening, James sat in his dorm room staring at his hands. The muscle memory of catching Liam's wrist, the way his body had moved without conscious thought. Coach Miller's training had become instinct. But with that power came responsibility, and the weight of Evelyn's teachings about character. His roommate, an engineering major named Ryan from Colorado, looked up from his calculus homework. "You okay, man? You've been quiet since you got back." "Just processing some stuff from home," James replied. "Those guys giving you trouble earlier. I saw the whole thing from my window." James tensed. "What did you see?" "Looked like some high school drama following you to college. But honestly, the way you handled it was impressive. Calm under pressure, that takes real strength." Ryan's words surprised James. He'd expected judgment, not respect. "My older brother had bullies in high school," Ryan continued. "He said the hardest part about college was learning that most people aren't like that, but the ones who are, they usually get worse before they get better." As if summoned by their conversation, loud laughter echoed from the hallway outside. Ethan and Liam's voices carried clearly through the thin dorm walls as they regaled their new friends with exaggerated stories from high school, each tale designed to establish their dominance and James's otherness. James clenched his fists, feeling the calluses from his summer training. He could end this quickly, show them exactly how much he'd changed, but Evelyn's voice whispered in his memory, "Your strength comes from your character, not your fists." The question was, how long could character withstand the systematic erosion of dignity that Ethan and Liam specialized in? The harassment began subtly, the way poison seeps into water. Ethan and Liam had learned sophistication during their brief summer of college preparation, understanding that university administrators took a dimmer view of obvious bullying than high school teachers had. It started with social isolation. Whenever James entered the dining hall, conversations would quiet, and chairs would suddenly become unavailable at tables where he'd been welcome before. Study groups he'd joined would mysteriously change, locations without telling him. Campus organizations he'd expressed interest in would somehow lose his application. "It's weird," Ryan told James after their second week of classes. "People keep asking me strange questions about you, like whether you have anger issues or if you've ever been violent." James's jaw tightened. "What do you tell them?" "The truth, that you're the most level-headed guy I know, but someone's definitely spreading stories." The someone became clear during a campus tour that James was leading for prospective students. As he pointed out the library and explained study resources, Liam appeared with a group of current students. "Oh, hey, you might want to know," Liam said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "That's James Thompson. He had some incidents at our high school, just something to be aware of for campus safety." The prospective students' parents immediately stepped closer to their children, eyeing James with suspicion. One mother asked the admissions representative if there was another tour guide available. James felt his hands begin to shake, not with fear, but with the effort of containing months of trained power. Coach Miller's voice echoed in his head. "Control the anger. Don't let it control you." "Excuse me," James said politely to the tour group. "I need to step away for a moment." He walked quickly toward the campus recreation center, his breathing shallow but controlled. Inside, he found what he was looking for, a small boxing area tucked behind the weight room, mostly unused except for the occasional student blowing off steam. James wrapped his hands methodically, the familiar ritual calming his racing heart. When he began working, the heavy bag, each punch carried the weight of weeks of accumulated frustration. Left hook for the dining hall isolation, right cross for the study group exclusions, uppercut for Liam's smug face during the tour. Nice form. James turned to find a senior watching him, an athletic student named Lucas Bennett, with the easy confidence of someone comfortable in his own skin. "Thanks, I'm James." "Lucas Bennett. I run informal boxing sessions here twice a week. You've got real training." "Summer at Miller's gym back home." Lucas nodded approvingly. "Danny Miller? That's serious training. You should come to our sessions, Tuesday and Thursday nights at 8. For the first time in weeks, James smiled. "I'd like that." Meanwhile, in the Sigma Chi fraternity house, Ethan paced the common room while Liam scrolled through social media. On his phone. "It's not working," Ethan said, frustration sharp in his voice. "He's not breaking like he used to." "Maybe he's just better at hiding it," Liam replied, not looking up from his screen. "No, it's more than that. Did you see how he handled himself during that tour thing?" The old Thompson would have run away crying. This one just left, controlled like he was choosing his battles. Liam finally looked up, sensing his friend's genuine agitation. "So? What are you saying?" "I'm saying we need to be smarter about this, more direct, make him react, in a way that shows everyone who he really is underneath all that fake composure." "What did you have in mind?" Ethan's expression hardened. Something that reminds him exactly what happened at graduation, something public enough that he can't just walk away from. Back at the recreation center, James was discovering something unexpected. Respect. The students who came to Lucas's boxing sessions treated him as an equal, judging him solely on his skill and character inside the ring. "You've got natural timing," Lucas told him after their first session together. "But more importantly, you've got discipline. Some guys come in here just wanting to hit things. You're actually learning." Emily Parker, who had been quietly documenting Ethan and Liam's harassment campaign, finally approached James after their American literature class. "We need to talk," she said quietly as other students filed out. "About what?" "About what's happening to you on campus. I know what Ethan and Liam are doing because I've been recording it." James stared at her. "Recording it?" "Someone needs to be keeping track. What they did at graduation was just the beginning. They're systematically trying to destroy your reputation here before you can establish yourself." "Why do you care?" Emily's expression grew somber. "Because I should have cared 4 years ago. I was valedictorian, but I was also a coward. I watched them torment you and said nothing because I was afraid they'd turn on me. And now, I'm tired of watching good people suffer, while bad people win through manipulation and lies." James considered her words. Having an ally, especially one as respected as Emily, could change everything. But it also meant acknowledging that the situation was escalating beyond his ability to handle alone. "What do you think I should do?" "Keep being yourself. Keep taking the high road, but also keep getting stronger." Emily glanced toward the recreation center. "Word is you've been impressing people at those boxing sessions." The October air carried the crisp promise of changing seasons. As students hurried across campus between classes, James had settled into a routine that gave him strength, Morning workouts, afternoon classes, evening boxing sessions with Lucas, and late-night study sessions where his academic excellence continued to shine. He was walking out of Professor Davis's American literature class when he overheard a heated conversation near the campus coffee shop. "You're disgusting, Liam. Absolutely disgusting." James recognized the voice. Sophie Turner, a sophomore from Oregon who'd been dating Liam since freshman orientation. She stood facing Liam with her arms crossed, her usually perfect composure cracked by obvious anger. "Come on, Soph, it was just a joke," Liam said, his voice carrying the wheedling tone of someone who knew he'd crossed a line. "A joke? You and Ethan spent 10 minutes telling everyone at lunch that James Thompson is some kind of dangerous criminal. You made up stories about him attacking people in high school. That's not a joke. That's character assassination." James paused behind a nearby tree, not wanting to eavesdrop but unable to avoid hearing the conversation that was clearly about him. "He's not like us, Sophie," Liam said. "You don't understand because you didn't go to high school with him." "No, Liam, I understand perfectly. He's not like you because he's actually a decent person." Sophie's voice rose, drawing stares from passing students. "I've watched him in our chemistry study group. He's kind, he's smart, and he helps people who are struggling. Meanwhile, you spend your time spreading lies about him because you can't stand that he won't cower anymore." Liam's voice sharpened. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I know what you and Ethan did at graduation. I saw the video, and frankly, it made me sick to my stomach that I was dating someone capable of such cruelty." Liam stepped closer, his face flushing red. "You're overreacting. It was high school stuff. Boys being boys. Boys being boys." Sophie's laugh was bitter. "You humiliated another human being on what should have been one of the proudest days of his life. You destroyed his diploma in front of his grandmother. That wasn't boys being boys, Liam. That was cruelty and bullying. And I won't pretend otherwise anymore." The word bullying hung in the air like a challenge. Liam looked around nervously, aware that other students were listening. "Don't throw that word around so casually," he said, lowering his voice. "What other word fits? You target him because he's an easy mark, because you think you're better than him, because your family's money has convinced you that other people exist for your entertainment." Liam's face went from red to white. "Sophie, you're being dramatic. I'm being honest and I'm done." Sophie pulled off the silver bracelet Liam had given her for her birthday and dropped it at his feet. "We're finished." She walked away, leaving Liam standing alone with curious students pretending not to stare. When he bent to pick up the bracelet, his hands were shaking. From his hiding spot, James felt an unexpected mixture of emotions. Relief that someone had finally called Liam out publicly, satisfaction that the bully was experiencing a consequence for his actions, but also weariness. He knew from experience that humiliated bullies became more dangerous, not less. That evening at boxing practice, Lucas noticed James's distraction. "Your footwork's off tonight," Lucas said, holding the focus mitt steady. "Something on your mind?" James threw a combination that lacked his usual precision. "Liam Hayes got dumped today. His girlfriend called him out for the way he treats me." "That's good news, right?" "Maybe. Or maybe it makes him more desperate to prove he's still in control." Lucas lowered the mitts. "You think he's going to escalate?" "I think humiliated bullies don't usually just give up and change their ways." Meanwhile, across campus in the Sigma Chi house, Liam was proving James's instincts correct. He sat in Ethan's room, crushing empty beer cans with more force than necessary. "She called me a bully, Ethan, in front of half the sophomore class." Ethan looked up from his economics homework. "Sophie Turner was always too good for you anyway. Find someone else." "You're missing the point." Liam stood up abruptly, pacing the small room. "She humiliated me because of him. Because of Thompson. Everything that's gone wrong since we got here traces back to him." "How do you figure that?" "In high school we had control. We knew exactly where we stood, where he stood. But here, people don't know the natural order of things. They see him in those boxing sessions, see him getting good grades, and they start thinking he's somehow equal to us." Ethan closed his textbook, recognizing the dangerous edge in his friend's voice. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying it's time we reminded everyone, including Thompson himself, exactly who he is and where he belongs. And this time, we make sure the message sticks." The menace in Liam's voice carried the weight of years of unchecked privilege, meeting its first real resistance. Outside, the autumn wind picked up, rattling windows like a warning of the storm to come. The harassment had reached a breaking point by mid-October. Ethan and Liam's whisper campaign had poisoned enough minds that James found himself increasingly isolated. Study groups disbanded when he arrived. Dining hall conversations stopped when he passed. Even some of the boxing session regulars began giving him sideways looks. Emily Parker watched it all happen with growing anger. During their chemistry lab, she finally confronted him. "You can't keep letting them do this to you," she said quietly, as they measured solutions. "I've been documenting everything, but we need to report it officially." James's jaw tightened. "Reporting it won't change anything. It'll just make me look weak." "Weak? You think standing up for yourself makes you weak?" "I think running to authority figures instead of handling my own problems makes me weak." Emily slammed her beaker down hard enough that other students looked over. "Your grandmother didn't raise you to be stupid, James. There's a difference between handling your problems and walking into a trap." That evening, James called Evelyn from his dorm room. "How's school, honey?" Evelyn's voice carried warmth across the miles. "Challenging those boys again?" "Yes, ma'am, they're trying to turn everyone against me." Evelyn was quiet for a long moment. "What does your heart tell you to do?" "Show them what I learned this summer." "Stop walking away." "And your head?" "That fighting proves everything they've been saying about me." "Sometimes, honey, the world puts us in positions where all our choices have consequences. The question is, which consequences can you live with?" Meanwhile, Ethan and Liam were planning in the Sigma Chi house. The monthly party was tonight, and they'd spent days spreading word that James wasn't welcome. "Here's the plan," Ethan said, standing in the backyard behind the fraternity house, where shadows gathered away from the main party. "We get Emily Parker back here, make some noise, and Thompson comes running." "And then?" Liam asked, still nursing his wounded pride from Sophie's public rejection. "Then we remind him what happened at graduation. Except this time, we make sure he remembers permanently." The party was loud and crowded by 10 May. Emily had come with friends but was planning to leave early for studying. She was heading toward the exit when Liam intercepted her near the back door. "Emily, can I talk to you outside about James? I think I owe you both an apology." Against her better judgment, she followed him into the shadows behind the house. The moment they were hidden, Ethan appeared. "Scream," Ethan told her. Calmly, loud enough for Thompson to hear. "I'm not helping you hurt him," Emily said. Liam pulled out his phone. "Hey, Thompson, you need to get to Sigma Chi house right now. Your friend's in trouble." Emily heard James's sharp voice through the speaker. "What trouble? Emily, are you there?" "James, don't—" Emily started, but Ethan covered her mouth. "Better hurry," Liam said, "before something really bad happens." James was at the recreation center when the call came, working the heavy bag to burn off frustration. Lucas saw his face change as he answered the phone. "What's wrong?" Lucas asked. "They have Emily." James was already unwrapping his hands, his movements sharp and purposeful. "Who has Emily?" "Ethan and Liam at the Sigma Chi house." Lucas grabbed his arm. "Don't do this, man. It's obviously a setup." "I know exactly what it is." James's voice carried a cold certainty that made Lucas step back. "But I can't let them hurt her because of me. Then call campus security. Call the police." James was already walking toward the door. "By the time they get there, it'll be too late." "James, think about this. You go there angry, you'll give them exactly what they want." James stopped at the door, his hand on the handle. For a moment, Lucas thought he'd gotten through to him. Then James turned around, and Lucas saw something in his eyes that made his blood run cold. "I'm not angry, Lucas. I'm done." The walk across campus felt both endless and too short. With each step, James felt his summer training take over. His breathing controlled, his movements fluid, his mind sharp and focused. He wasn't the broken boy from graduation anymore. He wasn't the victim who'd spent 4 years enduring their cruelty. He was someone who'd been pushed too far. As he approached the Sigma Chi house, music and laughter spilled out into the night. But around back where the shadows gathered, he could hear Emily's muffled voice and Liam's taunting laughter. James rounded the corner and saw them, Emily with Ethan's hand over her mouth, Liam holding his phone up like he was recording. Both of them grinning like they'd already won. "Well, well," Ethan said, releasing Emily. "Look who came to play hero." "Let her go," James said, his voice deadly calm as he stepped into the shadows behind the fraternity house. Ethan laughed, but there was something forced about it. "Or what? You'll call your grandmother to come save you?" Liam kept, his phone raised, recording. "This is perfect. Everyone's going to see the real James Thompson tonight." Emily tried to speak, but Ethan's grip tightened over her mouth. Her eyes were wide with fear, not for herself, but for what she could see building in James's expression. "I said, let her go." James took another step forward, and both Ethan and Liam noticed something different about his movement, fluid, controlled, dangerous. "You're not giving orders here, Thompson," Liam said, but his voice wavered slightly. "You don't belong at this party. You don't belong at this school. You don't belong anywhere near people like us." "People like you?" James's voice carried a cold edge. "You mean cowards who only fight when it's 2 against 1? Who hide behind daddy's money and attack innocent people?" Ethan released Emily and pushed her aside, stepping toward James. "Careful, kid. You're forgetting your place again." The word kid hung in the air like a lit fuse. Emily scrambled backward, recognizing that something irreversible was about to happen. "My place." James's composure cracked slightly, months of controlled rage bleeding through. "You want to know what my place is?" "Enlighten us," Liam said, still recording, thinking he was capturing James's breakdown. "My place is standing up to bullies. My place is protecting people who can't protect themselves. My place is showing cowards like you that your time is up." Ethan stepped closer, emboldened by Liam's camera and the familiar dynamic of intimidation. "Big words from someone who spent 4 years running away from us." "I'm not running anymore." "Good," Ethan said, shoving James hard in the chest. "Because you've got nowhere to go." But this time James didn't stumble backward. He absorbed the shove, his feet planted, his core solid from months of training. Ethan's eyes widened with surprise. "What happened to you over the summer, Thompson?" Liam asked, lowering his phone slightly. "I learned how to fight." Liam laughed nervously. "Against who, your grandmother?" "Against people who actually know how to throw a punch, not spoiled rich kids who've never been hit back." Ethan threw a wild swing at James's head, the same kind of untrained haymaker that had worked in high school when James was smaller and weaker. But Coach Miller had drilled James for months on exactly this scenario. James slipped the punch easily, Ethan's fist whistling harmlessly past his ear. Before Ethan could recover his balance, James's right cross caught him flush on the jaw, dropping him to his knees. "Holy," Liam started, his phone forgotten as he watched his best friend spit blood onto the grass. Ethan struggled to his feet, his coordination clearly affected. "You're dead, Thompson. You just assaulted me. I'll have you arrested for defending myself against 2 guys who lured me here with threats against an innocent girl." James gestured toward Emily, who was still recording everything on her own phone. "Good luck with that story." Liam realized the situation had shifted beyond their control. "Ethan, maybe we should—" "Shut up," Ethan whispered frantically, wiping blood from his mouth. "Nobody does this to me, nobody." He charged at James again, but desperation made him sloppy. James sidestepped and caught Ethan with an uppercut that lifted him off his feet before he crashed back down unconscious. Liam stared at his friend's motionless form, then at James, who stood over Ethan with his fists still raised, breathing hard but controlled. "Your turn," James said quietly. I don't want to fight you," Liam stammered, finally understanding that they'd pushed someone past his breaking point. "You should have thought about that before you spent months trying to destroy my life, before you used Emily as bait, before you decided I was your entertainment." Liam threw a desperate punch, more out of panic than strategy. James caught his wrist, the same way he had during their first encounter on campus. But this time he didn't let go. With Liam's arm trapped, James drove his knee into Liam's ribs, then released him to throw a combination that sent Liam crashing into the fraternity house wall. Both bullies lay groaning in the shadows, their 4 years of casual cruelty finally meeting consequences they couldn't buy or charm their way out of. James stood over them, his chest heaving, his fists bloody but his mind clear. For the first time since graduation, he felt like himself again. "It's over," he said, looking down at Ethan and Liam. "You're done." Emily helped James check his knuckles for serious damage when the sound of sirens cut through the party music. Red and blue lights began flashing across the fraternity house walls. "Someone called the police," Emily said, her voice tight with worry. Ethan struggled to sit up against the wall, blood still trickling from his nose. "Yeah, I did, right after this maniac attacked us." Liam was pulling his phone out with shaking hands. "I got most of it on video. James Thompson assaulting 2 students unprovoked." "That's not what happened," Emily protested. "I saw everything." "You saw your friend lose control and try to kill us," Ethan said, wiping blood from his mouth. Emily reached for her phone, realizing with horror that in the chaos of being grabbed and threatened, she'd dropped it. The screen was shattered, the device completely dead. Campus security arrived first, followed immediately by city police. Officer Daniels, a veteran cop, took one look at the scene, 2 bloodied students and one standing with bruised knuckles, and his expression hardened. "Who wants to tell me what happened here?" Officer Daniels asked. Ethan immediately pointed at James. "That guy attacked us, James Thompson. He's been making threats all semester, and tonight he just snapped and tried to kill us." Liam held up his phone triumphantly. "I got it all on video. He came out of nowhere throwing punches like a maniac. Look at what he did to us." Officer Daniels looked at the video Liam showed him. Shaky footage that began with James throwing his first punch, with no context of what led up to it. "Officer, that's not the whole story," Emily said desperately. "They lured me back. Here, they threatened me to get him to come." "Miss, step back, please," Officer Daniels said dismissively. "Son," he addressed James, "turn around and put your hands behind your back." "Officer, wait," Emily tried again. "I'm a witness. They used me as bait. Without video evidence or other witnesses, it's your word against theirs," Officer Daniels replied. "And I've got 2 victims and clear video of the assault." Ethan's father's voice carried across the parking lot as he arrived with Liam's parents, all having received frantic calls. "Officer, I'm William Carter," Ethan's father said. "These boys were brutally attacked by this individual." The presence of the wealthy parents immediately shifted the dynamic. Officer Daniels's demeanor became more deferential, as he, "Son called me immediately after the assault," William Carter continued. "This Thompson character has been stalking and threatening Ethan all semester. We have witnesses to his erratic behavior." "That's completely false," James started. "Son, you have the right to remain silent," Officer Daniels said, producing handcuffs. "I suggest you use it." Liam's mother dabbed at her eyes dramatically. "Look what he did to our boys. They could have been killed. We want full prosecution." Emily watched helplessly as her broken phone was dismissed as irrelevant evidence. Without it, she had no proof of the threatening phone call, no record of Ethan covering her mouth, no documentation of their premeditation. "Officer, please," she tried one more time. "I've been documenting their harassment of James for weeks. I have evidence on my computer." "Miss Parker," Officer Daniels said firmly, "emotional testimony from a friend isn't evidence. We have video of the actual assault and 2 clear victims." Ethan was helped to his feet by EMTs, playing up his injuries. "Officer, I want to press full charges. This maniac could have killed us." "We're talking about expulsion from the university," William Carter added. "My family has donated significantly to this institution. We won't tolerate violent criminals on campus." As James was led toward the police car, he caught Emily's eye. She was crying now, frustrated and powerless, her broken phone useless, in her hands. "I'll find another way to prove what really happened," she called after him. "Don't give up." Ethan's father put his arm around his son's shoulders. "Don't worry, son. We'll make sure this individual faces the full consequences of his actions. Our family has connections throughout the legal system." Party guests watched from the fraternity house windows as James was placed in the back of the police car. Within minutes, phones were buzzing across campus with Liam's video, edited footage that made James look like an unprovoked attacker. Officer Daniels looked at the assembled parents. This looks pretty straightforward. 2 victims, clear video evidence, and a perpetrator with obvious anger issues. As the police car pulled away, James stared out the back window at Emily, who stood alone with her broken phone and no way to prove the truth. Ethan and Liam were already spinning their story to gathering reporters, painting themselves as innocent victims of an unstable, violent student. For the first time since the fight, James felt the cold weight of reality. Ethan and Liam had orchestrated everything perfectly. They had money, influence, video evidence, and the automatic credibility that came with their social status. The county jail holding cells smelled of disinfectant and despair. James sat on the metal bench, staring at his bruised knuckles while his cellmate, a middle-aged man named Mike, snored loudly on the opposite bunk. The charges were serious: aggravated assault, battery, and disturbing the peace. His court-appointed attorney had been brutally honest about his chances. "The video doesn't look good for you, son," Thomas Reed had said during their brief meeting. "2 college students from good families, clear footage of you throwing punches. The DA is talking about making an example." "Thompson, visitor," the guard announced, unlocking the cell door. Evelyn sat across from him in the visitation room, her eyes red from crying but her spine straight with determination. "Tell me everything, honey, from the beginning." James recounted the night's events, watching his grandmother's expression shift from concern to fury to heartbreak. "They planned this," Evelyn said quietly. "They knew exactly how to push you past your breaking point." "Doesn't matter now. Their families have money, lawyers, influence. The video shows me attacking them. Even Emily can't help. Her phone got broken in the struggle." Evelyn gripped his hands across the table. "That Emily girl has been calling me every hour. She's not giving up, and neither am I. Grandma, my scholarship's already suspended. The university's talking about permanent expulsion. Even if I avoid prison, everything we worked for is gone. Nothing's gone until we say it's gone." But even Evelyn's fierce determination couldn't hide the tears threatening to spill from her eyes. She'd worked double shifts for years to help with his college expenses, and now it was all crumbling because of 2 boys who saw her grandson as entertainment. Meanwhile, across town, Ethan and Liam were being treated like heroes in their respective family homes. Ethan's father had hired the best criminal attorney in the state, while Liam's family was already planning a civil lawsuit. "The university has assured us that Thompson will be permanently expelled," William Carter told Ethan over breakfast, "and our lawyer says the criminal case is airtight." Ethan nodded, but something nagged at him. The way James had fought wasn't the desperate flailing of an angry teenager. It was controlled, trained, devastating. "Dad, what if people start asking questions about why we were back there with Emily?" "Son, you're the victims here. Let me worry about managing the narrative." At Liam's house, his mother was coordinating with a public relations firm. "We need to control this story before it gets out of hand. Liam, you're going to give an interview to the campus newspaper about campus safety and violence." "What should I say?" "That you and Ethan were trying to help Emily Parker when this unstable individual attacked you without provocation. Emphasize how frightened you were, how you feared for your lives." But Liam was also feeling uneasy. Emily Parker had been asking pointed questions around campus, and some students were starting to whisper that the story didn't add up. Emily herself was working frantically in the library, trying to piece together evidence without her broken phone. She'd reached out to every student who might have witnessed Ethan and Liam's harassment campaign, but most were too scared to get involved once they learned about the criminal charges. "I know what I saw," she told Lucas Bennett, who'd agreed to meet her. "They set him up. They used me as bait and provoked him into fighting." "I believe you," Lucas said. "But believing you and proving it are different things. Ethan's family already has people saying James has been violent in boxing sessions, that he's been making threats. Those are lies. Of course they're lies, but they're lies told by people with money and influence. James's story is being told by—" Lucas gestured around the nearly empty library. "Us." Coach Miller had driven up from home. As soon as he heard the news, he sat in his truck outside the jail, knowing he couldn't visit until tomorrow, feeling like he'd failed his student. His phone rang. "Coach Miller," This is Professor Davis from Central State University. I teach James Thompson. Yeah? I've been watching this situation unfold and something doesn't sit right. James is one of the most thoughtful, controlled students I've ever taught. He doesn't fit the profile of someone who'd attack unprovoked. Because he wouldn't. Those boys pushed him past his limit, I guarantee it. The problem is proving it. Can you get people to come forward? Professor Davis was quiet for a moment. People are scared. The Carter family has connections throughout the university. Students are worried about their own futures if they speak up. Back in his cell, James lay on the narrow bunk, staring at the ceiling. Tomorrow he'd face a judge for his arraignment, and the prosecutor was pushing for him to be held without bail as a flight risk and danger to the community. Everything Ethan and Liam had said about him for months was becoming reality. He was being painted as the dangerous student they'd always claimed he was. And now he had the criminal charges to prove their point. The courthouse buzzed with tension as James was led into the arraignment hearing in handcuffs and an orange jumpsuit. The gallery was packed. Ethan and Liam's families sat in the front row, their expensive lawyers flanking them like armor. Evelyn sat alone on the other side, having borrowed her best dress for this moment, while Coach Miller and Professor Davis occupied the row behind her. Judge Elizabeth Harper, a stern woman, in her 50s, reviewed the case file as James approached the defendant's table with his overworked public defender. Your Honor, Prosecutor Laura Bennett began, the state is seeking to hold Mr. Thompson without bail. The defendant viciously attacked 2 honor students in an unprovoked assault that was caught on video. He poses a clear danger to the community. Ethan and Liam sat in the front row, their faces carefully composed masks of victimhood, but when Ethan caught James's eye, his expression shifted for just a moment. A barely concealed smirk that said, "We won." Liam leaned over to whisper something to his mother, and both of them glanced at James with obvious satisfaction, the same look they'd worn at graduation when they'd torn up his diploma. "Mr. Reed," Judge Harper addressed James's attorney, "how does your client plead?" "Not guilty, Your Honor, and we request reasonable bail. Mr. Thompson is a scholarship student with no prior criminal record and strong ties to the community." Prosecutor Bennett stood again. "Your Honor, I'd like to call Ethan Carter to describe the brutal attack he endured." Ethan took the witness stand with practiced confidence, his family's expensive media training evident in every gesture. "He just came out of nowhere," Ethan testified, his voice carrying just the right amount of traumatized emotion. "Liam and I were having a normal conversation with Emily Parker when James Thompson appeared and started throwing punches. I've never been so terrified in my life." "Had Mr. Thompson made threats against you before?" Bennett asked. "Constantly. He'd been following us around campus, making angry comments about our high school. He clearly held some kind of grudge." Liam nodded along from the gallery, his face arranged in sympathetic concern. When he looked at James, his eyes held the same cruel amusement they'd always carried, the look of someone who'd never faced real consequences for anything. Evelyn's hands clenched into fists as she watched these boys lie with such casual ease. In the row behind her, Coach Miller muttered under his breath, "This is exactly what they wanted." "Your Honor," Ethan continued, "I'm afraid of what he might do next. He's clearly unstable and violent. I don't feel safe with him on campus." William Carter nodded approvingly from the front row, his expensive suit and confident bearing radiating the kind of influence that made courtrooms bend to his will. Liam was called next, his testimony perfectly coordinated with Ethan's. "I thought he was going to kill us. The way he fought, it wasn't normal anger. It was like he'd been training to hurt people." When Liam's eyes met James's during his testimony, he allowed himself a small, triumphant smile, the same smile he'd worn when he'd ripped up the diploma, when he'd shoved James at graduation while the crowd laughed. "I have video evidence of the attack," Liam added, producing his phone. "It shows everything." The prosecutor played the video for the court, shaky footage that began with James's first punch, with no context of what preceded it. The brutal efficiency of James's fighting was undeniable, each strike precise and devastating. "As you can see, Your Honor," Bennett said, "this was not a moment of passion, but a calculated assault by someone trained in violence. James's Attorney tried to object. Your Honor, this video doesn't show what led to the altercation. The video speaks for itself, Mr. Reed. The defendant clearly initiated violence against two defenseless students. From the gallery, Ethan's father leaned forward with satisfaction. His donations to various judicial campaigns were paying dividends, and he made sure James could see his confident expression. Liam's mother dabbed her eyes with a handkerchief, playing the role of grieving parent to perfection. But when she thought no one was looking, she exchanged a knowing glance with William Carter. They'd orchestrated this perfectly. Your Honor, Prosecutor Bennett concluded, James Thompson represents a clear and present danger. We request he be held without bail pending trial. Judge Harper looked down at James, who stood silently. Between his overwhelmed attorney and the weight of systematic injustice, the evidence seemed overwhelming. Video footage, victim testimony, character witnesses for the plaintiffs, and a defendant who fit every stereotype about dangerous young men. Mr. Thompson, Judge Harper said, do you have anything to say before I rule on bail? James looked out at the gallery, at Ethan and Liam's smirking faces, at their families' confident expressions, at Evelyn's heartbroken but determined eyes. The same people who'd laughed at his humiliation were now watching his complete destruction with obvious pleasure. No, Your Honor, James said quietly. Nothing I say here matters. The truth in those words hung heavy in the courtroom air, acknowledged by everyone present but spoken by no one else. Judge Harper was about to rule on bail when the courtroom doors burst open. Detective Sarah Mitchell strode in, her expression grim and determined, carrying a manila folder thick with documents. Your Honor, I apologize for the interruption, but new evidence has come to light that directly impacts these proceedings. Prosecutor Bennett looked annoyed. Your Honor, this is highly irregular. Detective Mitchell, Judge Harper said, recognizing the veteran investigator, this better be significant. It is, Your Honor. We've uncovered evidence. That completely contradicts the testimony given here today. Ethan's confident expression faltered slightly. Liam shifted uncomfortably in his seat, glancing at his parents with the first hint of worry. Detective Mitchell approached the bench. Your Honor, we obtained a warrant to search the defendant's social media accounts and discovered planning documents for what they called teaching Thompson a lesson. There are text messages between Carter and Hayes detailing their scheme to use Emily Parker as bait. That's impossible, William Carter whispered harshly to his lawyer. Ethan deleted everything. But his lawyer was already pale, understanding that deleted messages could be recovered with proper investigation. Furthermore, Detective Mitchell continued, we found additional witnesses. Sophie Turner, Liam Hayes' ex-girlfriend, has come forward with recorded conversations where Hayes explicitly discussed plans to destroy Thompson's reputation and make him snap so everyone sees what he really is. Liam's face went white. Sophie had recorded their private conversations during their relationship, something he'd never suspected. Your Honor, Detective Mitchell said, producing a phone from her folder, I have a recording made by Miss Turner 3 days before the incident. She played the audio, and Liam's voice filled the courtroom. Ethan's right. We need to make Thompson lose control in public, get him to fight us, then play the victims. With my dad's connections and Ethan's family's lawyers, we'll destroy him completely. Ethan's voice responded on the recording. The graduation thing was just the beginning. This time we finish what we started. The courtroom erupted. William Carter stood up, his face red with fury. This is entrapment. That recording was made without consent. Actually, Mr. Carter, Detective Mitchell replied calmly, Oregon is a one-party consent state. Miss Turner was legally entitled to record conversations she was part of. Judge Harper banged her gavel for order. Prosecutor Bennett, were you aware of this evidence? Bennett looked genuinely shocked. No, Your Honor, this is the first I'm hearing of any of this. There's more, Detective Mitchell continued. We also have security footage from the campus library showing Carter and Hayes researching legal precedents for assault cases, specifically looking up scenarios where alleged victims could claim self-defense. Liam jumped to his feet. That's not what we were doing. We were just... Sit down, his lawyer hissed, grabbing his arm. But Liam was panicking now, his carefully constructed facade crumbling. We never meant for it to go this far. It was supposed to be like high school. Liam. Shut up, Ethan whispered frantically. Your Honor, Detective Mitchell said, we also have testimony from multiple campus witnesses who observed Carter and Hayes systematically harassing Mr. Thompson throughout the semester, including attempts to isolate him socially and spread false rumors about his character. Emily Parker stood up in the gallery holding a tablet. Your Honor, I've recovered some data from my damaged phone. I have partial audio of them threatening me that night. Professor Davis rose as well. Your Honor, I have documentation of the academic harassment campaign against Mr. Thompson, including evidence that Carter and Hayes attempted to sabotage his participation in study groups and campus activities. William Carter was whispering urgently with his lawyer, who was shaking his head repeatedly. The expensive legal strategy they'd planned was collapsing in real time. Detective Mitchell, Judge Harper said, what are you recommending? Your Honor, based on this evidence, we believe Ethan Carter and Liam Hayes should be charged with conspiracy, false imprisonment, filing false police reports, and perjury. Mr. Thompson appears to be the victim of an elaborate harassment campaign designed to provoke exactly the response we saw. Evelyn burst into tears of relief in the gallery. Coach Miller put his hand on her shoulder, his own eyes bright with vindication. Ethan and Liam sat frozen, their world of privilege and immunity crashing down around them. The smirks were gone, replaced by the pale recognition that their actions finally had consequences. Mr. Reed, Judge Harper addressed James's attorney, I assume you'll be filing for immediate dismissal of all charges against your client. Yes, Your Honor, and we'll be pursuing charges against the actual perpetrators of this crime. The story exploded across social media within hours of the court hearing. Sophie Turner's recordings, combined with Detective Mitchell's evidence, created a perfect storm that destroyed Ethan and Liam's carefully crafted narrative. Privileged college students orchestrate elaborate harassment campaign, read the headline on the university newspaper website. Audio evidence reveals premeditated plot to destroy student. Liam's confession in open court, we never meant for it to go this far. It was supposed to be like high school, had been recorded by multiple phones and was now trending on every platform. Within 24 hours, the national media picked up the story. Cable news shows played the audio recordings on repeat, with legal analysts calling it one of the most calculated harassment campaigns they'd ever seen. What we're seeing here, CNN's legal correspondent explained, is not just bullying but a systematic effort by these young men to weaponize the criminal justice system against their victim. William Carter tried damage control, hiring a crisis management firm, but the evidence was too overwhelming. The recordings revealed not just the harassment campaign, but the entitled assumption that their wealth and status would protect them from consequences. At Central State University, President Margaret Evans called an emergency meeting with the Board of Trustees. The Carter family's donations suddenly seemed less important than the national scrutiny the university was facing. The optics are catastrophic, the university's communications director explained. We have students caught on tape planning to manipulate our disciplinary system, followed by perjury in criminal court. If we don't act decisively, we look complicit. The board voted unanimously. Ethan Carter and Liam Hayes were expelled from Central State University effective immediately, with notations on their permanent academic records that would follow them to any institution they tried to transfer to. William Carter's phone call to President Evans was intercepted by campus security and leaked to the press. This is ridiculous. My family has donated millions to this university. You can't destroy my son's future over some misunderstanding. Mr. Carter, President Evans replied coolly, your son destroyed his own future when he committed perjury in open court. Meanwhile, James met with civil rights attorney Daniel Harper, who had taken his case pro bono after seeing the media coverage. The evidence is overwhelming, Attorney Harper explained. We have them dead to rights on civil rights violations, intentional infliction of emotional distress, conspiracy, and defamation. Their families have deep pockets, and they're going to pay. The civil lawsuit was filed within a week, seeking $2 million in damages. Ethan and Liam's families initially tried to fight it, but their criminal lawyers advised them that fighting would only make things worse. "The audio recordings make this indefensible," Ethan's lawyer told William. "Carter, your son is heard planning the entire scheme. If this goes to trial, the jury will crucify him." The settlement negotiations were swift and brutal. The Carter and Hayes families, facing mounting legal bills and public humiliation, agreed to a substantial payout rather than risk a jury trial. $1.8 million, Attorney Harper told James over the phone. Plus, they have to issue public apologies and perform community service focused on anti-bullying education. James sat in Evelyn's kitchen, still processing how completely his world had changed in just 2 weeks. What about their criminal charges? Ethan and Liam each pleaded guilty to conspiracy and filing false police reports. They'll serve 6 months in county jail and 3 years probation. Liam's perjury charge got him an additional 6 months. Evelyn, who had been listening quietly, finally spoke. "Good. Maybe some time behind bars will teach them what it feels like to be powerless." The most satisfying moment came when James received a call from Coach Robert Johnson, the head of Central State University's boxing program. "Son, I've been following your story," Coach Johnson said. "The way you handled yourself, showing restraint for months, only fighting when someone innocent was threatened, then maintaining your dignity through this whole legal mess, that's the kind of character I want on my team. I'm offering you a full athletic scholarship to join our boxing program. Academic and athletic combined, full ride for 4 years, plus a path to compete nationally if that's something you're interested." And James looked at Evelyn, who was crying again, but this time with pure joy. "I'd be honored, Coach Johnson." 6 months later, James stood in the gleaming new apartment he'd rented near campus, watching Evelyn unpack books in what would be her own bedroom. The settlement money had changed everything, not just financially, but in ways he was still discovering. "I still can't believe this place is ours," Evelyn said, running her hand along the granite countertop in the kitchen. "A dishwasher, honey. I haven't had a dishwasher since your parents were alive." James smiled, remembering the cramped house where Evelyn had worked double shifts just to keep the lights on. "The lawyer says after we pay taxes and set aside money for your retirement, we'll still have enough for you to quit that community center job permanently." "Quit?" Evelyn laughed. "Honey, I'm going back to teaching. Principal Andrews already offered me a position at Jefferson Elementary. Says they need someone who knows how to fight for kids who can't fight for themselves." The irony wasn't lost on either of them. Evelyn would be returning to the same school district where Ethan and Liam had tormented her grandson, but now as an advocate rather than a bystander. Coach Johnson knocked on the apartment door, arriving for their weekly check-in. The boxing program had become more than just athletics for James. It was therapy, discipline, and purpose rolled into one. "How are you feeling about the regional tournament next month?" Coach Johnson asked, settling into the comfortable couch that Evelyn had picked out with obvious delight. "Ready," James said simply. "More than ready." The transformation was visible in everything about him. His shoulders carried confidence instead of defensive tension. His voice held authority rather than the careful quiet of someone trying to avoid notice. The broken boy from graduation had been replaced by a young man who knew his worth. "The ESPN interview requests keep coming in," Coach Johnson mentioned. "You sure you want to keep declining them?" "For now, I want to earn my place. In the ring first, then tell my story." Evelyn beamed with pride. "That's my grandson, never taking shortcuts, always earning what he gets." Emily Parker arrived for their weekly study session, carrying coffee and wearing the confident smile of someone who'd found her own voice through the ordeal. She'd been accepted into pre-med programs at 3 top universities, her courage in standing up for truth having caught the attention of admissions committees. "Any word from those two?" Emily asked, settling at the dining room table where James's textbooks were already spread out. "Their lawyer says they're having a rough time in county jail," James replied. "Apparently, bullies don't do well when they can't hide behind daddy's money." "Good," Emily said, with satisfaction. "Maybe they'll learn something about consequences." The settlement had been more than just money. It was validation. Every dollar represented acknowledgement that what had happened to him was wrong, that his pain mattered, that justice could prevail even when the system seemed rigged against him. Professor Davis stopped by that evening, as he did every few weeks, carrying James's latest essay marked with an A+ and extensive comments. "Your writing has evolved remarkably," Professor Davis said. "There's a depth to your analysis now, an understanding of injustice and redemption that comes from lived experience." "I had good teachers," James replied, glancing at Evelyn, who was preparing dinner in her new kitchen with obvious joy. "The university wants to feature your story in the alumni magazine," Professor Davis continued. "From harassment victim to scholarship athlete to academic achiever, it's inspiring." James considered this. "Maybe when I'm ready." That night, as Evelyn settled into her own bedroom for the first time in decades, James sat at his desk working on an application essay for law school. His academic scholarship and boxing success had opened doors he'd never imagined. But he'd found his true calling watching Detective Mitchell and Attorney Harper fight for justice. His phone buzzed with a text from Lucas Bennett. "Saw the news about your tournament ranking. Told you that summer training would pay off." James smiled, remembering the broken phone call Evelyn had made to Coach Miller after graduation, begging him to teach her grandson how to fight. She'd known then what James had taken months to understand. Sometimes you had to be strong enough to demand respect before the world would give it to you. The diploma that Ethan and Liam had torn up at graduation had been replaced by something better. A life built on his own terms, surrounded by people who valued his character, with resources to help others facing similar battles. I hope you enjoyed that story. Please like the video and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. In the meantime, I have handpicked 2 stories for you that I think you will enjoy. Have a great day.